I came to tell you a legend that I learned from my granny growing up. My granny always told us legends, and she's so dramatic. She would act everything out and, make it really, really funny. And, but anyway, the story is about bullying, and it brings me back to my own childhood. And a lot of times growing up, many people made fun of me. I was constantly bullied, made fun of. It really can damage a person, and I don't think people realize what it can actually do to a person when you make fun of them so much, So in my own classroom, if I see bullying, I call it right away, and I will talk about it right away. I don't let things go too far, and then I give them scenarios on how to fix things and how a person would feel or feels when they're being made fun of, and then have them apologize and come together and work together. I'm against bullying, and I don't agree on it, and I don't think it feeds anyone's spirit. It actually can damage you for life. So teach your kids at home. I mean, even adults do it, right? The story is called Elk and the Wren. So this little wren is walking through the woods. So he's walking through the woods. On the trail, at the end of the trail, is this giant elk. So the elk's just standing there. And the wren says to him, "Excuse me, can you please move aside so I may pass you?" And the elk was a big, crabby thing. And he looks down at him and says, "No, I'm not moving for a little wren like you." And so the wren says, "If you don't move aside, I'm just going to have to jump on your hooves." So what the wren does is he starts to hop on each hoof. He goes back and forth. And as he's hopping back and forth, the elk starts to starts to stomp down and trying to get this little wren, right? And he goes, "Stop it! If you keep doing that, I'm just going to sniff you out my nose." So next thing you know, the elk goes down and he goes and sniffs the little wren, and the wren goes flying into his nostril, and then goes flying down into his tummy, and then goes shooting out his mungus from his bum. So anyway, he comes out and he asks the big elk again, "Excuse me, can you please move to one side so I may pass you?" And the crabby old elk said, "No, I already told you I'm not moving to one side. And if you keep bugging me, I'm just going to sniff you up my nose again." So the little wren starts to taunt him again. And he starts to hop on each hoof again. So he's hopping back and forth. The elk, of course, is getting really close now, right? So he starts to stomp down. He's trying to get this wren. And then he just takes a big sniff and sniffs him up his nose again. So good. So there goes the wren again, goes flying up his nostril and goes down into the tummy and flies out his bum again. And so now the wren's thinking, what am I going to do here? So the wren grabs the cedar bark cape and he grabs 2 sticks. So he approaches the elk again and he says, "Excuse me, can you please move to one side so I may pass you?" And the elk said, "I told you twice. I told you 2 times already. I'm not moving aside for a little wren like you." So the wren has this cedar bark cape and he wraps it around him. And he starts to hop back and forth. Remember, he has those 2 sticks in his hand too. So as he's hopping back and forth, the elk starts to stomp back and forth, and then the elk takes a big sniff, so sniffs up that little wren. And wren, remember, he has this cedar bark and he has those 2 sticks, and now he goes flying in his nostrils and down into the tummy of the elk, and he stops in the middle of the tummy. So now he's in the tummy. He takes off the cape and he throws it down, grabs those 2 sticks and starts to rub them together as fast as he could, and then rubbing them. And next thing you know, what do you think comes? So now this fire starts to, well, he started a fire in the tummy of the elk. So then what the little wren does is he hops outside the mungus and he stood there. Next thing you know, the elk starts going and smoke starts coming out of his nose, out of his mouth, his ears, and his mungus. But sadly, the elk falls down and he dies. So what the little wren does is he goes back home, he goes back to the village, and he starts telling the people, I killed the elk, I killed the big bully elk. Anyway, so everyone starts grabbing buckets and they start grabbing their knives, and you know, and they're going to go up, and they're going up to that trail where this elk is supposed to be. So when they get there, they take what they need and each family gets fed. But this little old lady goes walking up, and she's the last of everybody that walks up there. And all that was left was the bones. So anyway, she took the bones anyway, and you know, we know that bones have a lot of medicine, so she took it and nothing was wasted. But anyway, so I go back and forth with this story because I'm not sure who the bully actually is, or if they're bullying each other or whatever, I don't know. You know, I think if the elk just moved, it could have been avoided, and you know, he could have been nice and courteous and just moved aside. He shouldn't even have had to ask, you know, he shouldn't have even had to ask him to move. He should have just moved aside like a kind person would do. And then the wren didn't have to go and taunt him back and bug him back, because, you know, now that makes 2 wrongs. So anyway, I go back and forth with the story, but that story is about bullying, and either way, it doesn't work. So it's best to be a nice, courteous, loving person. And this is what we are trying to pass on to this next generation, because I know that a lot of us were raised with all that teasing and taunting and bullying, you know. And so let's break the cycle and teach our children correctly. I hope you enjoyed the story.